Hey guys, it's your favorite creator here, and today we have some really exciting news. I'm pumped and you should be too. If you haven't heard, Crunchyroll recently released a list of the webtoon they're planning to make into anime. Now, if you don't know anything about Webtoon, it is an online comic platform that creates digital comics. It's really cool. It's totally free. There's no catch. Go check it out. But for those of you, which is most of you, I assume, who already know what it is and who are already excited, who already saw the news a while back that they would be, they released the list. And they are planning on making 3, as far as I know. And they're not really shocking choices. They make a lot of sense, and you'll see why. So, what are the 3 that they chose? We already know that the Jim Henson Company is working to create Lore Olympus. That makes sense when you think about the fact that, they already worked to create a show called The Storyteller a while back, which was a show about folk tales, specifically, get this, Greek mythology, and what is Lore Olympus. Plus, Lore Olympus is the #1 most viewed American webtoon. Just makes complete sense. Similarly, the animes that Crunchyroll is making makes sense for their viewership. So the 3 that they're making is Tower of God, The God of High School, and Noblesse. Why do these make sense? So let's take a look at some of the similarities here between these 3 comics. So one is length of the comics. All 3 are very long, drawn out action fantasy comics. Tower of God has 470 episodes to date. It's been translated into 29 languages. Obviously not all those episodes, but most of them, okay? Noblesse, it's completed. And it is 545 episodes total. Again, action fantasy. And it's been translated into 30 languages to date. God of High School, 455 episodes, 20 languages, okay? So all 3 have been translated into an enormous amount of languages, which means that they have a potential international audience. And then all 3 are long fantasy webtoons. Another similarity is that all 3 have an art style that already is sort of anime styled, right? So I would assume that it is much more difficult to take a comic that has a traditional, comic style and turn it into a TV show, because you either have to really stick to the art and try and animate that, or you have to completely change some aspects of the story, because the art is very important to a lot of artists, right? So all 3 of these comics have an anime style to them. Okay? And why is this important? Like, why is this fantasy? Why is this length? Why is this style important? Well, Crunchyroll is trying to pull in webtoon readers, so making a comic like Unordinary into a show would make sense for that purpose. But they're also trying to please the fans they already have and the community they've already built, and that is anime fans, not webtoon fans. Webtoon fans will come whether it's Unordinary or Tower of God, because it's a webtoon and they just want to see their fan base be put on TV. That's really cool. They want to see that. They'll come regardless of what comic they choose. But the Crunchyroll fans have a wider variety. There are so many animes out there already. They have very distinct tastes, and they don't care what webtoon is. A lot of them don't know what it is. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And so they're not looking at this like, oh my gosh, webtoon is getting a Crunchyroll anime. This is so exciting. They're looking at this like, is this a anime that I want to spend my time watching? Is this something that interests me? And what is really big in anime right now is fighting, action, bang, bang. That type of action. Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online. The list goes on. And these comics are similar in style, similar in storyline. Let's take a look at these, okay? Tower of God. You have a boy who is exceptionally talented, and he enters this tower, and at the top of the tower, your wishes come true, your greatest desires come true, but first you have to get through the floors, and each individual floor is a whole new world. It's why I call it the Lord of the Rings of Webtoon. It is so well designed. There's so much attention to detail. Each floor is a world. Where have we heard that before? Sword Art Online. Sword Art Online. Very similar to Tower of God in that aspect. And then you look at the characters of Tower of God. They're powerful, they're cool, they look cool, they feel cool, they get you excited, they have powers that like you wish you could have. And they look cool, they just the action, the energy, it fits right in with anime. Noblesse. It's already been made into 2 separate short animated films, 40 minutes estimate each, on YouTube for free. It already works with anime. It already works. It's already there. The style is there. The process is there. They can take that and just make it into a show. It's already there. And it's also a storyline that fits very well with anime. There's this age-old, this 1,000-year-old vampire person who wakes up, and now he has to go to a high school founded by his servant, Frankenstein. And I won't give away too much of the storyline. That's the synopsis you can find on Webtoon. But anime fans like high school content, most of them. Why? Because they go to high school, or, unfortunately, because, other reasons. But they like anime with high schools. It's very popular. For whatever reasons, it's very popular. And especially when you have an abnormal person going to high school. Maybe it's because they wish that, that was them. Everyone kind of has that fantasy when they're in high school of, they're special. There's something different about them. Everyone latches onto that, and anime really capitalizes on that well. But this works very well. It's supernatural, it's fantasy, it's completed. The storyline, they don't have to wait for the author to draw a whole bunch of episodes, right? Part of the reason I assume that they picked these 3 comics, besides the established fan base, is that they are very long already. They've been going on for years. And so, unlike something like Unordinary or I Love You, where they would have to wait an extended period of time if they caught up to the comic. Let's say that they create shows, and they have a whole team creating these shows, whereas the comic is created by one person or one person with a couple assistants, right? And that person has to take breaks more often. In the interview I conducted recently with Jason Brubaker, author of Sithra, worked with animation as well, DreamWorks, on Kung Fu Panda, among other things, one of the things he mentioned is the crushing deadlines in Webtoon. Because you're one person working to create weekly content. And when you don't live up to the fans' standards, to the fans' expectations, you take a hit. Right? Think about how many times people will be reading a comic and they're like, wow, this episode wasn't as long as last week. Or this episode felt, like the author put more effort or less effort in. The fans notice every little thing, right? So let's say you have a comic artist whose storyline, great, art, great, has an established fan base, but they only have 100 episodes out there, right? And so they're working to create weekly content, but they have to take 6 months breaks every year or every 2 years, right? Meanwhile, Crunchyroll's not stopping. They have a whole team. Somebody wants a break, they can just fill that slot. They have a team and the resources to hire more people, their company. So while this artist is taking a break, you have a team animating this. So if they were to catch up to that artist and then the artist has to take a break, unless the artist has written their story to the extent where they can be like, okay, I don't have my comic drawn out fully, but here's what's happening next, so that they could create the show, they're going to struggle with that. That's going to be something to consider. And so with something like Tower of God, 470 episodes, you don't have to worry about that. You have years and years worth of content to create. So that's something that they had to take into consideration as well. I assume I'm not part of the team, right? Tower of God comes out April 1st, I believe, which is just around the corner as of recording this video. And it's very exciting. I'm excited. They've released several trailers. The art is similar to the comic, gives you a deja vu, and it's really gets me giddy. If you're a Webtoon fan, even if you haven't read Tower of God, I recommend trying out the anime and the comic. And if you're a Crunchyroll fan, even if you haven't read the comic, I recommend you watch the anime. And if you like it, go read the comic, because the comic is just as exciting. The comic's great. I will look forward to watching the animes, all three, and giving you my thoughts. And until then, thanks for sticking with me.